Mr. Vittorino. Are we ready, Dunia, to start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and welcome to today's event, including migrants and communities in socio-economic recovery, experiences from the IOM-UNDP partnership on COVID-19. My name is Luca Renda. I am the team leader for recovery solutions and human mobility at the UNDP Crisis Bureau. It is great to be with you all today. I hope you can hear and see me well. This event is part of the Development Dialogue series, through which UNDP is highlighting its approach to building resilience to shocks and supporting the most vulnerable population through development solutions. And we do this together with a wide range of partners. And today, we will take a closer look at our collaboration with IOM, which is long-standing, but received a significant boost last year when our two principals announced the beginning of a renewed and strengthened phase of our partnership, emphasizing the need for joint efforts, particularly in response to the pandemic. This is a 90-minute session divided in two parts. First, we have an opening segment with two very special speakers, which I will introduce in a moment, to be followed by a second segment during which we will present an overview of our joint initiative, the results achieved, and the plans ahead, and proceed with the panel discussion with four exceptional guests from Bangladesh, Kyrgyzstan, Lesotho, and Peru. There will be space for interaction with the audience, and we invite you to use the chat box to introduce yourself, post questions or comments, or express your desire to make a statement. We understand that there are representatives from the donor community, for example, who have expressed interest in speaking. There is translation available, so use the translation button with your language of preference. We trust that the discussion will be informative and inspiring for all of you connected today, and for the many others who will watch the recording later. It is now time to introduce our first speakers. We are delighted, truly delighted to have with us our two principals, UNDP Administrator, Mr. Achim Steiner, and the IOM Director General, Mr. Antonio Vittorino. Thank you so much for being with us today. Your presence truly means a lot to all of us, and especially, I would say, to our colleagues in the field. There cannot be a stronger sign of support for our renewed partnership. I now give the floor to our administrator for his opening remarks. Over to you, Achim.
Thank you, Luca. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear Antonio, it is a pleasure to join you for the opening of our joint event, and to do so together with my dear colleague and friend Antonio Vittorino, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration. In October 2020, on the occasion of the launch of UNDP's publication, Human Mobility and Shared Opportunities, we together communicated our intent to reinforce this strategic partnership between our two organizations. We are now leveraging our complementary strength and mandates and seizing upon broader synergies within the UN system, at least as part of the UN development system reform. Addressing the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on migrants and their communities was one of our joint priorities, alongside strengthened country and regional support. It is therefore a timely opportunity to take stock of our experiences to date. As we all know, COVID-19 has precipitated an unprecedented health and socioeconomic crisis. It has also triggered a development crisis and exacerbated vulnerabilities in fragile...
Извините, мне позвонили и прервалось. Можете еще раз включить видео?
Sorry, somebody has their mic open. Please mute. Thank you. It has also triggered a development crisis and exacerbated vulnerabilities in fragile and crisis-affected settings. Given this fact, UNDP invested 54% of its total budget last year in fragile and crisis contexts. Indeed, the impact of COVID-19 on communities and societies is highly differentiated, resulting in compounded poverty, growing inequality, and marginalization. The pandemic has affected people on the move particularly hard, especially women who are on the front lines of the fight also against COVID-19, both at work and at home. They have also suffered from increased vulnerability and, sadly, as we know, of gender-based violence. Alongside economic hardship, especially for those working in the informal sector, migrants in general have faced a higher risk of discrimination, xenophobia, and gender-based violence. And I thank Antonio and his team at IOM for having repeatedly over the past year drawn the world's attention to this particular issue. Up until the pandemic hit, the number of international migrants had risen steadily, up from 221 million in 2010 to 281 million in the year 2020. But closed borders have now translated into large numbers of stranded migrants, as well as increased returns to migrants' countries of origin. Even though migration was severely curtailed since March 2020, we saw migrants stepping up as agents of change, most prominently in the healthcare sector. In this context, officially recorded remittance flows to low and middle income countries fell to $540 billion in 2020. While lower than projected, it still represents the loss of crucial financing lifelines from many vulnerable households in developing countries, and will affect families' abilities to spend in critical areas like education or health, as more of their finances will be directed to solve food shortages and immediate livelihood needs. A direct illustration of why this pandemic is translating in so many ways also into a development emergency. In this challenging context, we know that migration will continue as humans have always done, and global efforts to eradicate poverty, hunger, improve health and education, and promote gender equality will simply not succeed if development plans and sectoral policies do not incorporate migrants, whatever their origin, countries, or ethnicity, their reasons for moving, or their migration status. Addressing migrants' needs alongside local populations is a central goal of UNDP when supporting governments to address the socio-economic impact of COVID-19. Indeed, our approach to human mobility, in alignment with that of IOM, stresses the importance of mainstreaming migration and forced displacement into national and local development policies. The socio-economic integration of migrants and local populations and building social cohesion are also at the very core of our priorities. Partnerships such as ours, where we are strengthening our collaboration with IOM in the framework of the UN Network on Migration, and in line with our commitment towards the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, are fundamental to this endeavor. This approach will bring a range of positive knock-on effects. For instance, the International Monetary Fund estimates that a 1 percentage point increase in the share of migrants in the adult population of a country can raise GDP per capita by up to 2% in the long term. More broadly, integrating migrants means that they can contribute their human, financial, and social capital to the sustainable development of their countries of origin, transit, and destination. Excellencies, dear colleagues, allow me for a moment to focus on our efforts to reinforce this IOM-UNDP partnership in the context of COVID-19. At the end of 2020, IOM and UNDP launched a joint initiative to provide seed funding to address the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on migration, trying to understand the impact of this unprecedented and synchronized pandemic. Following a call for proposals, we supported initiatives in 9 countries: Bangladesh, Belarus, El Salvador, Guinea, Indonesia, Kyrgyzstan, Lesotho, Moldova, and Peru. And I'm very grateful that on our panel today, we will have voices directly from some of these countries. And let me briefly touch on a couple of tangible results. Firstly, in Guinea, we jointly promoted social cohesion in the border region with Mali, working with young people and small businesses, supporting entrepreneurs and training border officials, and engaging with local communities. Given the success of this engagement, we are now seeking to scale up this work. Similarly, in Lesotho, our assessment of women informal cross-border traders is helping us to apply a strong gender lens to the socioeconomic recovery programming. Secondly, the large numbers of returning migrants in the wake of the pandemic requires measures to support their socioeconomic reintegration. In particular, local government officials need support to make informed choices. Look, for instance, to our joint study in Kyrgyzstan that analyzes access to labor markets, service delivery, and social cohesion between returning migrants and local populations. The findings are enabling us together to devise sustainable reintegration programs tailored to local recovery needs, including through investment schemes, for instance. Thirdly, inclusion can be advanced through quick impact measures, such as demonstrated in Peru, Building on a call for proposals, the City of Lima, UNDP, and IOM selected 5 co-created solutions, as we refer to them, to promote greater social cohesion between local communities and Venezuelan migrants and refugees, including ways to boost entrepreneurship. We also trained 12 community organizations on how to better leverage citizen participation mechanisms. These are tangible interventions with real impact in real life situations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in these unprecedented times, we need to shift from the immediate socioeconomic response to also incorporating the longer-term recovery by building on migrants as assets and contributors to communities and societies in which they live and from which they come. Migrants are already at the forefront of efforts to propel the socioeconomic recovery and the global goals by developing new businesses, innovation, and social initiatives. It is in this context that UNDP and IOM are now calling for the expansion of predictable financial resources to scale up our joint efforts to support migrants and local communities. We have an exceptional and timely opportunity to do so through sustaining the seed funding initiatives presented here today. This support will help us to assist national and local governments to advance migrant-inclusive initiatives that can help propel the socioeconomic recovery from COVID-19. After a year of intermittent lockdowns across the world, one thing is very clear. Human mobility is not principally a problem to be solved. It is a value to be treasured and to be realized. And it is in that spirit that I'm very proud to have joined in this partnership with Antonio Vitorino, to whom I now gladly pass the floor and thank him once again for the spirit and the partnership in which we have worked together in these challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakim, for your thoughtful remarks, for presenting an overview of UNDP approach to human mobility, principle of solidarity, inclusion, agency, voice. These are some of the cornerstones that we based our approach upon. I now pass the floor to IOM Director General, Mr. Antonio Vitorino. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear Hakim. First of all, thank you very much for your intervention. I appreciate very much your leadership, and we are fully aligned with you in our joint efforts. I want also to thank you for having such an excellent team that has provided us the opportunity to develop this close partnership between IOM and the UNDP, a new way of working in the UN, I think, which is very relevant for our future. As you recalled, as we are more than a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is very clear that this crisis, well, it's far from over. The pandemic has triggered an unprecedented global health, humanitarian, social, economic, and also human rights crisis, with many mobility dimensions that has further set back the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals across the globe. This is particularly worrying when we are entering the decade of action. Allow me to give you a few examples of concern to IOM. Health impacts, together with a rise in extreme poverty, political instability, conflict, disasters, and food insecurity, have driven humanitarian needs to new levels and have further intensified ongoing humanitarian crises a little bit over the world. The imposition of border restrictions and travel bans has left a significant number of migrants stranded, including seasonal workers, temporary residence holders, international students, seafarers, and many others. Many more were forced to return to their home countries, unable to access employment due to lockdowns and other restrictions, and struggling to provide for themselves and for their families. And the limitations to international and national mobility and to trade, which are closely connected, are deepening the uneven socio-economic impacts of the pandemic, with migrants, displaced persons, and affected communities particularly impacted by global job losses and increasing levels of inequalities and poverty. At the same time, the pandemic has also shown the importance of migrant workers as an essential part of the workforce in many sectors, such as health and agriculture. Migration, in my view, is interconnected with sustainable development at many levels. And it is clear, as you said, that without incorporating migration and migrants in all planning and programming, we cannot recover from COVID-19 and achieve what we all want, the goals of the 2030 agenda. Critical to this is the inclusion of people on the move into global vaccination efforts. IOM's own surveys across over 160 countries show that access to vaccination, both on paper as well as in practice, is impeded in at least 53 countries, a situation which is exacerbated for migrants in irregular status. This is not only critical to ensure public health, but also to reduce inequality and to empower migrant contributions to the pandemic response. In fact, when coherently integrated into policy planning, migration can indeed act as an accelerator for both recovering better from the pandemic and achieving the SDGs. And to do this, joint UN action is essential. And I am very grateful that the ongoing partnership with UNDP is allowing us to advance with this together and to show to the others that this is possible. IOM and UNDP have been collaborating closely for many years, as you have said, and I would like to highlight in particular our joint commitment for the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration and the support and collaboration through the UN Network on Migration with UNDP's value membership on the Executive Committee of the network. Now, the joint seed funding that we are speaking about today. It's an initiative as an expression of IOM's and UNDP's commitment to the UN development system reform and the humanitarian development and peace nexus, striving to advance joint programming to reach the ones furthest behind, whilst empowering migrants and societies on equal foot to accelerate the achievement of the 2030 agenda. UNDP's technical lead on the COVID-19 socio-economic response in support of the resident coordinator system, in my view, has been crucial for formulating joint country response plans in support of government priorities across the globe. The 9 seed funding initiatives supported in this first round allowed us to deepen further our understanding on how migration, COVID-19, and sustainable development are indeed interconnected and build on our comparative advantage to address the identified challenges and opportunities in support of the wider UN response plans. For instance, in Indonesia, a joint assessment identified the challenges faced by over 180,000 Indonesian migrant workers who had returned as an immediate result of the pandemic, highlighting their vulnerabilities, but also identifying ways in which local governance structures and local actors have a key role to play. Local governance structures can respond to their needs upon return. In Bangladesh, IOM and UNDP were able to combine tools for displacement tracking with the assessment of social economic vulnerability in order to identify the impact of COVID-19 on the risks of further displacement caused by natural hazards. And in other countries, you said that, Hakim, such as Peru and El Salvador, cooperation with local actors through community awareness campaigns and coordination mechanisms help to enhance social cohesion among diverse communities, both Venezuelans and host communities, and formulate joint roadmaps for action and partnership to accelerate recovery. I'm sure that many more examples will be shared by our panelists today. As we advance with our global response to COVID-19, this joint event serves to take stock of lessons learned, but also to remind ourselves that human mobility is an integral part of our societies, and that therefore we cannot be safe until everybody is safe. The activities implemented through this joint initiative showcase the importance of integrating migration into COVID-19, social economic recovery programming, and at the same time, the benefits of putting mobility and partnerships for sustainable development at the heart of efforts to recover better from the pandemic. And that's going to be the priority ahead of us. These projects are a small window into our joint UN response, but they can act as catalysts for wider action together with other UN agencies and development cooperation actors to support national and local government response, such as, for instance, the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund. The seed funding initiative has shown the strategic value in expanding community-based information on the impacts of the pandemic and bringing together a variety of factors around migration and COVID-19 response and recovery. The lessons learned from each one of them will inform the work of IOM and UNDP in the future. Now, money. As the first round of funding was supported with resources from UNDP, and we appreciate that very much, I'm glad from my side to announce today that IOM is putting forward its part of the funds for a second round of country initiatives that can provide the same strategic value for country offices to work together for innovative approaches to respond and recover better from the pandemic. But much more is needed. And I am therefore reiterating what Akim has just called you to reinforce your efforts in ensuring that migrants and displaced populations are included in the response and in the recovery efforts, and these interventions can be further upscaled and sustained. Therefore, I look forward to continuing to work with you, Akim, and your leadership, together with UNDP and with our other UN partners and member states, to capitalize on the opportunities for future collaboration, building on our collective commitments in the 2030 Agenda and the Global Compact for Migration. And I wish you all a successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vitorino. Thank you for reminding us that migration can indeed be an accelerator of recovery. Thank you for highlighting all the good work that is done in the UN Network on Migration under your coordination. And of course, thank you so much for announcing IOM contribution to the joint initiative. This will allow us to expand the number of countries or scale up some of the more successful initiatives. It is now time to close this opening segment and allow our two principals to leave. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for your intervention. Thank you for your support to the joint initiative. Colleagues in the field, you have heard the two principles. The marching orders are more work together, more joint effort, redoubling our efforts. We now continue with the program, and for the second part of the session, I'm now handing the moderation to my good friend and colleague Cécile Rialan from IOM, who will be chairing the second part. Cécile is our main counterpart in IOM for this initiative, and we have a really excellent collaboration with her and her team. Cécile, over to you.
Many thanks, Luca, and likewise on all the words that you said. Indeed, it's my great pleasure to be leading us through the second segment of this important joint event today. We're going to have first a presentation from David Coudour from UNDP headquarters that is going to give us some of the main features of what came out from this first round of our seed initiative. So this is, we're going to give him the floor for 10 minutes. And this afterwards will be followed by a panel discussion. So I think, Luca, you already announced some of our distinguished speakers that we have lined up. We're very excited to hear them. They're coming from different backgrounds. We're going to hear from country level perspective, from local administration level perspective as well. So we really look forward to hearing what they have to say about the issue at hand today. And then we will hopefully have enough time for an active engagement with all the participants. We have some colleagues from some bilateral cooperation agencies that have already indicated their interest in contributing to our discussions, and then we'll open up to the broader audience. So with this said, I'm really happy to first now turn to David Coudour for his presentation. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Cécile, colleagues, and very happy about the good news that DG Vittorino just shared. And I also hope that the colleagues in the field are also excited by this good news. So let me present very briefly for all the participants what has been done during this seed funding initiative before we hear colleagues from the field sharing their experiences. So we launched this initiative at the end of last year. We made a call for proposal, and we received a significant number of proposals. And we selected nine countries in the joint effort between the IOM headquarters Migration and Sustainable Development Unit and the UNDP's Crisis Bureau Recovery Solutions and Human Mobility team. These 9 countries you can see on the map. We have 2 in Latin America, El Salvador and Peru. We have several in Europe and Central Asia. We have Belarus, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan. In Asia, we have Bangladesh and Indonesia. And in Africa, we have Guinea and Lesotho. So a wide coverage of countries. This seed funding initiative sought to enhance the understanding of the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 on communities and migrant populations, including returnees and in some cases forcibly displaced populations. And we implemented pilot activities to incorporate their needs and challenges into the wider COVID-19 response. And so these activities have been very wide in terms of intervention. We try to summarize the different activities. There was a strong focus, for instance, on the topic of return migration, which has been, as you know, with all the context in 2020 and even this year of border closings has been a big issue. And also the role of diasporas and host diasporas have supported their communities of origin. So in El Salvador, Indonesia, Kyrgyzstan, and the Republic of Moldova, we have had this focus on return migration and diasporas. In 2 countries, the 2 African countries, we had a strong focus on cross-border mobility, which has been jeopardized by the current context, and also, and it's very interesting, a strong focus on gender and on youth. On another perspective, the issue of socio-economic integration, more broadly of migrant inclusion, and also of fighting against xenophobia was a strong focus of the initiatives in Belarus and Peru. And last but not least, in Bangladesh, we had a strong focus on social and environmental vulnerabilities, disaster risks, and displacement. And the colleagues will share that later on. So these joint country initiatives with their different thematic entry points provide very good snapshots into the impact of the pandemic in terms of human mobility and development and its consequences for migrants and societies as a whole. For instance, in Lesotho and Guinea, COVID-19 was found to have disproportionate effects on communities living in cross-border regions. And through a consultative process, both IOM and UNDP identified the need to build capacities of border officials for ensuring safe mobility and promoting community cohesion during the pandemic. We will hear more about this later from our panelists. The interventions, as you can see on the slide, highlighted the opportunities in leveraging safe and regular migration for sustainable recovery. In other countries' initiatives, activities included developing municipal level COVID-19 socio-economic response plans, community awareness campaigns and coordination mechanism to enhance social cohesion. We had joint roadmaps for action and partnership to accelerate recovery and more. And this showcased the importance of integrating migration into COVID-19 socio-economic recovery programming and the benefits of strong multi-stakeholder partnership that puts mobility and SDG 17 on partnership for the goals at the heart of efforts to recover better from the pandemic. So what have been the key achievements? And again, it's just an appetizer for what is coming. The funding proved to be a strategic investment and catalyst to produce joint and scalable results and further enhance joint programming between IOM and UNDP in support of migrants, communities, and member states. And some of the key achievements include that we concretely showed how community can use safe and regular migration as an opportunity to enhance sustainable recovery from the pandemic. The initiative also supported country offices to build joint UN plans to support COVID-19 recovery, sustainable development, and migration. That was the case, for instance, in Moldova with a joint roadmap. We gain an in-depth and contextual understanding of COVID-19's impact on human mobility and socioeconomic development. And for instance, in Bangladesh, where we use two displacement and development analysis tools. And we also set a joint strategic course to firmly establish mutually beneficial partnerships that are essential for maximizing the potential of migration for sustainable development. What are the next steps? We will discuss that later, but we had a stock-taking workshop a couple of weeks ago with all the countries part of these initiatives, and some of the way forward that was identified was the issue of supporting local and national governments to invest in data collection and national and local data collection strategies, including providing evidence and informing the design process of initiatives, policies, and practices. We also had the need to strengthen national and local policy capacities through coordination mechanisms and technical support. That was, for instance, the case in Belarus and Kyrgyzstan. The need to promote cross-border, multi-country or regional initiatives for recovering better and including a gender lens with the cases of Guinea and Lesotho. It's also important to mobilize non-traditional donors and partners, including the private sector, for multi-stakeholder innovative approaches and inclusive recovery. And the colleagues in Peru insisted on this point. And finally, it's important to share knowledge, and this is what we do today actually, and to amplify good practices through ongoing national and UN response plans and strategies, to rely and capitalize on the regional coordination platforms, to also use and implement the review mechanisms for the SDGs, like the voluntary national reviews, and also the implementation of the GCM, the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. And finally, to also use the global dialogues to develop our initiatives. So that being said, we are going to hear more from the countries themselves, and thanks for your participation. Cécile, over to you.
Many thanks, David. I think you've managed to pack a lot of information in a few minutes, and I just want to refer everyone to the report that has been produced that goes into some of those findings and some of those initiatives that you have presented. So thank you very much, David. So now we're going to move indeed to a panel discussion. So I'm going to introduce each of the panel members as I give them the floor. And it's my great pleasure to start with Ms. Rosa Untumbayeva, who is the ex-president of the Kyrgyz Republic and the founder of the International Public Foundation Rosa Otumbayeva Initiative. And she's also a member of the Club de Madrid, member of the High-Level Advisory Board on Mediation, established by the initiative of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and member of the Pan-European Commission on Health and Sustainable Development. So if you could tell us, how did COVID-19 pandemic impact migration patterns in Kyrgyzstan? And how can, in your opinion, we can strengthen cooperation between migrants, local governments, and other actors? As we have seen that in the number of the initiatives that have been funded, this has been one of the key success factors. So I'm handing you the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much.
Cécile, I believe Rosa has some connection problems. So if we could just pass to the next panelist, and hopefully she'll be connected. Thank you.
Absolutely. I really hope that she will be able to join us later. So turning without any further ado, then to Mr. Moshin, who is the Honorary Secretary of the Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief within the government of Bangladesh. I'm really happy to have you with us, sir. So in the specific context of Bangladesh, and more specifically looking at the situation in the district of Kurigram, what have been, have you seen displacement risks increase by the pandemic? And based on your experience and the work that has been done, what role can interventions on resilience and disaster risk reduction play in recovery strategy? So you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Respected Chair, Excellencies, learned panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Bangladesh. At the very outset, I would like to thank to organizers for inviting me in such an auspicious event. Bangladesh is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world due to its location in floodplains of major rivers and its high population exposure. The country is densely populated with a total population of more than 166 million people, where 1,200 people live per square kilometer. This is unique. According to the German Watch Global Climate Risks Index 2021, Bangladesh is ranked as the 7th most affected country by extreme weather events between 2000 to 2019. A report published by UNSCAP mentioned that more than 76% of the population of Bangladesh are exposed to multi-hazard risks, mostly climate-related disasters. The latest report of Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC, in May 2021 pointed that globally, 30.7 million displacements from disasters recorded in 2020. Among them, Bangladesh was the 3rd most affected country as disaster triggered 4.4 million new displacement. Even then, COVID-19 outbreak also particularly affected the vulnerable people. Bangladesh has developed and updated relevant policies to encourage disaster risk reduction practices. After applied for the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, most of the disaster risk management approach shifted from reactive approach to proactive approach. Under the preview of Disaster Management Act 2020, Standing Orders on Disaster 2019 has been included the contemporary proactive risk reduction concepts for ensuring whole of society approach people. In March 2020, we have developed a contingency plan especially for the COVID-19 that entails the preparedness, response and recovery for the most vulnerable people, including the displacement and the migrant people. The government provided a large-scale humanitarian assistance and food support to 70 million affected people following the COVID-19 contingency plan. We provided cash and stimulus packages to the small entrepreneurs to support their livelihoods as well. The support is ongoing and according to the need. Bangladesh government also took initiatives for building disaster resilient houses, around 1 million houses for providing them to the landless, homeless, and displaced families across the country. And our government is continuing to provide humanitarian assistance, including shelter, food, health services to 1.2 million forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. Despite being one of the largest refugee camps in the world, we could still minimize the health risks of COVID-19 through various efforts. Multidimensional endeavors of Bangladesh for reducing disaster risk protected the development gains and reflected in maintaining around 7.5% GDP growth in the last decade. Even in the pandemic situation, the GDP was 5.24% in the last fiscal year. Furthermore, Bangladesh has achieved qualification and recommendation from UN for LDC graduation. However, in 2020, we faced Cyclone Amphan and 5 times monsoon flood. I mentioned 5 times, monsoon flood that incurred huge damage and affected more than 6 million people amid the pandemic. Now I am to mention that regarding the Kurigram district, whatever you have mentioned from the UNDP was also affected by the floods. The recent cyclone, yes, affected the coastal areas of Bangladesh. Therefore, we will have a continue to effort towards sustainable development through effective disaster risk reduction measures. As Mr. Vitorino mentioned, I would like to mention that IOM and UNDP piloted their displacement tracking metrics tool in Kurigram district to monitor displacement and mobility of the people during the COVID-19. The tool is designed to capture, process, and disseminate information to provide a better understanding on the movement and needs of displacement population. I want to mention that Bangladesh formulated a national strategy on the management of the disaster and the climate-induced internal displacement just last year, and we are going to finalize the action plan. I can say Bangladesh is progressing in disaster risk reduction through whole of society approach during COVID-19 situation. I will expect working together with everyone present in this event until achieving socio-economic full recovery and towards building a safer and resilient nation. This is all from me. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, the work that you're doing on disaster risk reduction in the wake of interlocking crisis, as you clearly mentioned, and the magnitude of the challenges in Bangladesh. And I think it was really interesting also to hear from you how data through the DTM has been instrumental to actually understand what to do and better frame action and interventions. So thank you so much for that. And again, just to mention to all the participants that if you have direct questions that you'd like to ask to the speakers, please do post that in the chat, and we'll make sure to attend to them at a later point in time. So thanks again. So without further ado, I'd like to maybe move back to Ms. Rosa Otumbayeva. Is she now available? I guess no. So let's then move to Mr. Victor Quinteros Marquina, who's joining us from the municipality of Lima in Peru. So he's the neighborhood participation manager, and we're extremely happy to have you with us to give us the perspective from a municipality. So indeed, how has your municipality been able to leverage on inclusive policies for Venezuelan refugees and migrants, as well as local populations? And please share an example of two about how you've gone about that. And also, could you please tell us what responses need to be strengthened, in your opinion, to boost socio-economic recovery from COVID-19 in the medium, as well as in the longer term, and how working with UN can be instrumental in that regard. So you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la invitación. Saludos a PNUD y OIM. Voy a compartir pantalla rápidamente. Listo. En principio, voy a mencionar 2 líneas de trabajo que han recibido apoyo por parte de PNUD, vuelvo a repetir, y OIM, tanto desde lo programático como lo operativo, que sería más ejemplos de trabajo en campo. Soy Víctor Quinteros y represento a la Municipalidad de Lima, capital del Perú. Solo para dar datos de contexto sobre el tema migratorio en mi país, el tema específico tiene que ver con la migración venezolana, que del año 2018 a la fecha ha tenido un incremento de 8.000 personas a actualmente más de 1.200.000. Entonces, es una situación anómala, no es una dinámica migratoria o una movilidad como la que siempre ha ocurrido en mi país. De hecho, es el segundo país de la región que ha recibido esta masiva migración venezolana. El primer país ha sido Colombia. Entonces, lo primero que podría decir es que frente a este reto, en el Perú solo existía y existe una política nacional migratoria, uno de cuyos ejes tiene que ver con extranjeros y extranjeras en el Perú. Pero este eje no tiene plan nacional, así que no hay un instrumento operativo. Entonces, como respuesta a la primera consulta, a nivel de Lima, que es la capital del Perú y que concentra al 80% de población migrante, lo que ha sido una oportunidad deriva de la aprobación de una norma de alcance metropolitano, de alcance solo en el departamento de Lima, que es una ordenanza que prohíbe la discriminación y promueve la igualdad. Esta ordenanza, publicada a inicios de 2019, genera el marco para la provisión de servicios de manera inclusiva para toda la población venezolana y migrante en general. Definitivamente, a nivel de vecinos, a nivel vecinal, el migrante no tiene estatus o nacionalidad. El vecino está sujeto a los mismos problemas, falta de seguridad, falta de limpieza en general, ¿no? Por tanto, tiene un estatus muy similar a cualquier vecino peruano. El vecino venezolano, por tanto, accede de modo inclusivo a servicios que tienen que ver con desarrollo económico, desarrollo social, participación vecinal en general. A nivel programático, digamos que en ausencia de plan nacional, Lima ha aprobado una estrategia metropolitana de juventudes que en su construcción participativa contó con foros de migrantes de jóvenes migrantes que aportaron su problemática y propuestas de solución. Pero a nivel programático lo principal es que el principal instrumento de gestión de Lima, de toda provincia en el Perú, es el denominado Plan de Desarrollo Concertado. Y ese Plan de Desarrollo Concertado, cuya versión 2021-2026 está en construcción, cuenta con el apoyo de PNUD y OIM en la inserción del eje transversal migrante. De hecho, con OIM y con PNUD estamos trabajando la estrategia metropolitana de integración socioeconómica, que es un insumo para planificación del trabajo migrante de aquí al futuro. Ahora, si voy a hablar de ejemplos a nivel operativo, que son las respuestas, de alguna manera las fotos que me han acompañado en los 3 slides que he podido pasar forman parte de la recuperación de espacios públicos en distintos barrios o zonas de Lima, específicamente en el distrito o el centro histórico de Lima. Allí, población migrante y población de acogida han trabajado juntas, por ejemplo, en el desarrollo de murales que expresan distintos modos de integración de ambas poblaciones, en lo que es integración cultural, lo que es integración deportiva, lo que es integración incluso en el ámbito de culinario, entre otros, el ámbito deportivo e incluso los emprendimientos. Eso se llama integración social, pero ya a nivel de terreno, a nivel de espacio, a nivel de barrio. Además de la recuperación de espacios públicos, de hecho, esta es una muestra. Este es el comedor popular que está en una de las zonas intervenidas a través de murales. Quienes están representadas en este mural son las cocineras del comedor. Son peruanas. Son las que aparecen en el mural y son las que, por ejemplo, aportaron con el almuerzo a las muralistas venezolanas, peruanas, que participaron de modo combinado en esta extraordinaria pintura, ¿no? Extraordinario mural. Pero otra forma de integración social es integrar a la población venezolana en el sistema participativo local, es decir, formalizar sus uniones espontáneas de colectivos migrantes en organizaciones sociales formalmente constituidas a nivel de cada distrito. Al ser formales, tienen un canal de representación directa con cada autoridad local. En Lima hay 43 distritos. Al momento se han formalizado 2 organizaciones en lo que es Lima Cercado, que es el centro histórico, pero vienen en curso otras tantas en los distintos 42 distritos de la capital. Con esa integración social pueden postular a ser miembros de juntas vecinales y pueden concursar a la presentación de proyectos, ¿no? Sean sociales o de infraestructuras. En resumen, ellos están trabajando y participando activamente en su propio empoderamiento local y en ser reales gestores de desarrollo comunitario. Esta intervención en el campo también es con apoyo del PNUD y OIM, y esperamos seguir contando con ese respaldo. Muchas gracias.
Many thanks for really highlighting the importance of migrants empowerment, how to organize migrants and really connect them with municipal planning, service delivery. I think that was fantastic, and also for sharing these great pictures with us. I think that was really wonderful. So I would like now to leave the floor to Miss Betty Wabunora, sorry if I mispronounce your name, who is the UNDP resident representative in Lesotho. So very warm welcome to you. So we are very keen because we understand that the African Continental Free Trade Area is preparing a specific protocol on women and trade. So how can it benefit migrant inclusive approaches at national and subnational levels? And also, how can the key findings from your assessment on informal cross-border trade and the specific vulnerabilities of women that women face can feed into action? So you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia, and distinguished panelists and participants. Good afternoon from the Mountain Kingdom of Lesotho. I would just like to start by giving a bit of background to the country. So Lesotho is a country with a population of about 2.2 million people. We are solely bordered by South Africa and highly dependent on South Africa for infrastructure, to the access to regional and international markets. We also rely on South Africa for 70% of our consumable goods and services. We have about a quarter of our population hosted in South Africa as migrant laborers in professional areas, as miners, women as domestic workers, and in many other professions. The medium small enterprises in the country, 76% are women, and this is a sector that is highly unregistered and informal in the way they do business. The seed funding that we did get from UNDP, IOM, we used this to jointly carry out a study on the impact of COVID-19 on the informal cross-border traders in the country. The assessment findings were used to inform the COVID response and recovery plan, as it identified critical gaps at the policy and institutional framework levels to safeguard and promote the cross-border traders in a gender-sensitive manner. So we're going to use that to work along with government in that line. Trying to bring into the question, and you ask about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This is a free trade area with preferential trade regimes, including lower tariffs among its projected 55 member states. It will create a potential market of 1.2 billion people. It will be the world's largest free trade area in terms of member countries since the formation of the World Trade Organization. Trade facilitation measures intend to cut the red tape and simplify customs procedures, and also usher in deep-seated reforms needed to make an attractive destination, Africa, an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, freer movement of goods and services and people. So we see this directly related to the findings of the studies, and we've had a bit of that presented by the earlier presenter. Potential benefits from this AfTA area agreement is in increase in intra-Africa trade to about 52%, increased manufacturing sector production, diversification of African economies away from the narrow base of primary products into manufacturing of goods and services. It is expected that it will increase employment of the youth in the manufacturing and the services sectors over the period. It's expected to lift about 30 million people out of extreme poverty and also increase incomes of about 68 million people. For women, importantly, the informal cross-border traders, and from our findings, but also aligned very much to the benefits from the Africa Free Trade Area, it will open up markets in critical sectors such as agriculture, clothing, and textiles. And so reducing the tariffs will make it really affordable for informal traders through these formal channels. I would like to focus a bit on how we intend to work, how our working out aloud in collaboration with IOM and from the findings we did receive. So the study found that over 40% of these traders were women. And so they were not considered in the government response for border control measures. So while Lesotho has a trade policy in gender that is gender responsive, it was a bit blind to the contribution of this kind of sector of the informal cross borders in the trade volumes, in the revenue, in the local economic activities, the food security, and poverty reduction at the household level. So that contribution of that sector in the economy was not taken into account. Also, there was lots of inadequate border facilities for storage and hygiene, and so affecting the goods and multiplying the challenges around food security. So we intend to facilitate an inclusive policy framework and advocacy as one of the key measures we would like to take. The other would be they were also excluded from the social protection relief funds for COVID. And this is basically because of their informality and them not really being to the forefront. So we would like to raise their voices and create representation of this sector as part of the way going forward. A significant volume of these traders also deal in food and food products, contributing significantly to food security, which is a major challenge for the country. So we intend to also profile these informal traders in a way that they benefit from the Africa Free Trade Area agreements and policies therein. We intend to also guide them and guide their businesses through capacity building to create formality and regularization of these businesses in a way that they would benefit from structures that are set up for the free trade area, but also would benefit from government structures and private partner support in the area of resuscitating businesses that were impacted by the COVID pandemic. So capacity building and adoption of informative businesses. I would like to speak a bit to the potential benefits of AFTA.
So if you could maybe just do your wrap-up comments, because we are running a bit behind time. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so UNDP and UN Women in partnership with the AFTA Secretariat are already having roundtable discussions at the country level with women in trade to inform on the protocol for women and trade. So through the discussions at this level and from the studies from the collaboration IOM-UNDP, we are hopeful that we shall be able to tease out the issues that affect this sector of traders and would bring them to the protocol. And really, in summary, the AFTA is a definite game changer for Lesotho, but that we realize there are several challenges and hurdles, including economic and geographical positioning, as well as political challenges that may affect the ability for the traders to enjoy this area network. However, through collaborations through IOM and other partners, we are building resilience of the people to ensure that they are ready and are able to benefit from the AFTA.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and really for this Zoom also on the critical importance of transborder trade in relation to human mobility and how it connects with other critical development sectors like food security. So I think this work is absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. So I understand that we have now online Rosa Otumbayeva, so I hope this is indeed the case.
Hello. Yes, it is the case. We will hand the floor to her. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So I just want to say that we're really running a little bit behind schedule. So if I could really invite the intervention to be brief. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, esteemed guests, thank you very much for your patience. Allow me to thank you for this invitation. I'm honored to speak at this event, be part of this series of dialogues. Before zooming in on COVID impacts on key migration patterns, I would like to give you an overview of our migration situation prior to the pandemic. Over the last decades, my country witnessed several waves of rampant migration outflows, accounting today for over 1 million or almost quarter of our population, leaving the country on a temporary or permanent basis. Migrant workers outside of the country represent up to 20% of the economically active population, and most of them are young people, aged 15 to 29. Among them, women migrants account for 40% of migrants, and especially they are vulnerable in their inability to secure decent work opportunities and social protection. By doing that, they drain our country of its most active human capital and socio-economic development potential. Our role is to mitigate migration from problem
We seem to have...
and development partners, we have been able to leverage expertise and knowledge acquired by migrants abroad for concrete skills transfer initiatives in Pakistan. And we have successful examples of mainstreaming migration aspects in national and local policy. However, we are aware that a lot yet has to be done. The COVID-19 pandemic had a profound impact on our migration patterns, with an estimated up to 200,000 migrants returned during the pandemic from Russian Federation and from Kazakhstan, which are principal destination countries for us. This had a snowball effect on the existing difficult context back in Kyrgyzstan, especially in the local level. Recently, we had a UNDP IOM assessment. It was joint seed funding initiative, which highlighted numerous challenges faced by migrants upon return to their local communities. There has been very little, if any, reintegration support, both at national and local levels, for our returnees who have lost their ability to work and support their families. Most of them point to an almost non-existent role of local authorities in providing support to them, especially due to COVID-19. Besides the lack of reintegration, return Kyrgyz migrants also facing numerous additional challenges such as financial, social, legal, informational, psychological, health, and many others. Another interesting fact highlighted by study is that 54% of those who returned are planning to migrate again to the same country of destination as soon as the situation allows for it, while 35% that they would choose to stay in Pakistan if there were job or investment opportunity for them at home. The same trend was reconfirmed by the recent IOM mapping, when over 60% of current migrants expressed their interest in returning home permanently, subject to availability of jobs, lack of corruption, better quality of education, basic service at the local level. Assessment provided promising findings into migrants' strong interest in engaging with local development if there is a transparency, effective communication, partnership, mutual trust with local governments. We must today join efforts towards larger countrywide integration for development agenda in order to harness positive outcomes of migration for development. We need to further work together to build and strengthen partnership between development partners, national, local authorities, non-government sector, private sector, migrants, local communities. The evidence collected under the seed funding provides comprehensive framework for such further partnering. We need to highlight the positive contribution of migrants and returnees and reduce impediments for their sustainable reintegration and engagement back home. These priorities are aligned with the newly approved state policy on migration and are also enforced by the President on migration, approving a number of measures aimed at improving the migration situation in the country and creating an enabling socio-economic environment for the effective return, reintegration, and engagement of migrants back home. This creates...
Can I ask you please to wrap up your statement, because we...
Partnerships, joint fundraising, and funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and apologies for having to cut you, because I think you your voice, your strong voice really was heard despite the technical hurdles that we've encountered. So really happy that in the end we've managed to have your intervention and all the important things that you said about what needs to happen in the context of high level of returns and what does it mean in terms of connecting this reality with national development planning, looking at policy coherence across different levels of governance. So thank you very much for those inputs. So I'd like now to get to the second part of this panel interaction and turning to some of our key partners in the development world. And we're really happy to have a number of bilateral cooperation agencies that have expressed interest in addressing us today. And so I'm going so basically we were going to have BMZ, SIDA, the SDC, as well as the European Commission through DG INPA that will take the floor. And I understand potentially also our colleagues from Annabelle, but this is not confirmed. So if I could ask all of you, please, to be very brief in your remarks and really stick to 2 minutes maximum. So we do have time for some interaction later down the line. So thank you. And I'd like to turn first to Anne Itzegard from the BMZ. And you have the floor.
Thank you very much. BMZ stands for the German Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. And thank you so much for all the insights. It's really great to see what is happening. And I can just express that from a German perspective, we really appreciate to see this partnership between UNDP and IOM and everybody who is involved. Also that we, in general, really value partnerships, and particularly in the current poly-pandemic, we think it is absolutely crucial to work together. And that's what we also practically do. So let me come to some activities that we would like to highlight. The DG mentioned the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund, and what we particularly like about that is the joint programming. It's not only coherent policy action, but it's also like really agencies and partners working together. That's why Germany is the biggest donor of the fund, and we are happy to see that some of the projects have started on the ground, and really having UNDP and IOM here and seeing that also those agencies who are active in the global network on migration also work together in other activities. It's really great to see. And we really very much support this idea of project implementing activities which go together, and also the multi-stakeholder approach which goes with it. If I can come to some of our local activities that we do, we really work together with cities. We think it is crucial when it comes to migration, because this is where the policies that we talk about are really implemented and become lived reality. So very pleased also to have seen a city perspective. We also work in Bangladesh, and we have a project called Urgent Management on Internal Migration Due to Climate Change, where we work together with cities and local authorities to support the living conditions for migrants who have left their homes because of the impacts of climate change, for example, floodings. The project supports local governments and works together with the Ministry of Welfare, and particularly has a focus on vulnerable groups. We also work together with cities in Latin America, particularly in Colombia and Ecuador, where we strengthen the capacities of the most affected municipalities and directly also support local governments and civil society organizations to contribute. And one last thing I would like to highlight, what we are really proud about, that we closely cooperate with diaspora. We do have a returning experts program. These are people who have usually studied and gained professional experience in Germany, but who would like to return to their home country and contribute to its development. So what we do is we support the matching of development needs and of the diaspora expertise. And this is really a personal experience where people can contribute to their home country. And yeah, I think that's a program which is also very, very valuable. But thank you very much for your interventions today. It was really inspiring to hear that and to see that there's so much going on the ground, and congratulations. And I hope it will continue very well. I tried to speed up. I hope I kept to the 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Anne, for first of all, the words of encouragement and really embracing the value of partnership. I think this is exactly the spirit in which we are doing this, and it's great to see that this is hitting the right chord, with BMZ, and we look forward to continuing this work with you, particularly also in the context of the MPTF, and thanking you very much for the support that Germany is providing. So I'd like now to turn the floor to our colleagues from SIDA in Sweden for 2 minutes, if you can.
Thank you so much, Cecile. Dear Mr. Steiner, Mr. Victorino, panelists and participants. First of all, I would like to thank UNDP and IOM for engaging in this joint work to leverage migration for sustainable development. And a special thanks to the panel for the enriching presentations on how governments can ensure an inclusive and sustainable recovery from COVID-19, which includes mobile populations. We believe that the use of systematic data for mobile populations is key for the inclusion of migrants and displaced persons in development planning. And we're working on this together with IOM and together with the Swedish Authority for Statistics. The aim for Sweden is to support the positive development effects of migration, both for migrants and developing countries. Since migration can contribute to sustainable development, it's a prioritized theme, and we see it as part of our efforts to deliver on the Agenda 2030 and the principle of leaving no one behind. To do this, we have stepped up our efforts to understand poverty in specific contexts and to better focus on who is poor and to address vulnerability. We have developed and updated our framework for multidimensional poverty analysis and applying it now to all of our operations. And this has highlighted the need to better understand the situation of migrants and displaced. We're asking in this analysis, who is living in poverty and how is poverty manifesting itself for certain groups in certain contexts, and what are the underlying reasons for those who are left behind. We believe that migrants, displaced and persons on the move are a case in point, and that we all jointly need to work harder to understand what constraints they are facing, but also how they can be supported as agents of change and how they can contribute to sustainable development. Thanks for providing us examples of how this can be done in practice in effective COVID-19 response and recovery. Policymakers and development agencies like ourselves need these approaches to inspire us to take effective decisions. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Ingela, and also for reinforcing the value of this joint work that we do with UNDP. For bilateral cooperation actors as important as SIDA, and for emphasizing the importance of working with data and understanding what is exactly the situation at hand that we have to tackle, understanding better what is the situation of migrants, therefore, from a socio-economic perspective, etc. Because this is indeed, as you rightly said, the key to really respond properly and with development solutions. So this is really important work, and thank you very much for sharing it with us. So I'd like now to call upon the Swiss Development Corporation. If you could also stick to 2 minutes, please. So you have the floor.
Yes, hello, this is Simone Giger from the SDC. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I try to be brief. I would like, first of all, to echo the previous speakers in really welcoming this partnership by the IOM and UNDP. We really believe that in the current situation, when resources for furthering the sustainable development are shrinking while needs are multiplying, it makes complete sense that to join forces, and we are very much in favor of such partnerships. Now, with regard to the topic of today's discussion, some of you may know that Switzerland has really been a strong advocate for the inclusion of migrants into different policy areas and development activities for many years. And I believe it's fair to say that we were at least one of the pioneers of mainstreaming migration into different policy areas. And we have done this jointly with the IOM and the UN and UNDP. And I believe also that we have been one of the champions that really, together with different UN agencies, in really demonstrating the relevance of migration for advancing the sustainable development goals on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, also in pointing out the risks of not considering the challenges associated with regular migration and forced displacement to the achievement of the SDGs. Now, together with different UN agencies, we have pioneered different programs on the nexus of migration and development. I would just very briefly like to touch upon one program that Cécile and Luca know very well. It's the global program on making migration work for sustainable development, also known as the mainstreaming program, which is in fact being jointly implemented by the IOM and UNDP in 11 countries across the globe. And what makes this program very special is that it combines policy-oriented actions and the mainstreaming of migration into different policy areas with very concrete operational activities on the ground at the local level. And we do these in 4 priority areas: employment and economic inclusion, education, health, and social security. Now, I believe that this program that I just mentioned is also very well positioned to actually showcase concrete experiences on how to really involve migrants and their communities into effective COVID responses, and especially on how to reinforce the collaboration between local governments and migrants associations in recovery efforts. So I really hope that this program, which will document and also that the lessons learned and the good practices will inspire other countries and development partners to maybe follow this good example. And I thank you all for your attention and look forward to our continuous collaboration.
Many thanks, Simone. And I can only echo what you said, that indeed the SDC is a pioneer in this work. I think the SDC is the first bilateral cooperation agency that understood indeed the critical aspect of policy coherence and really looking at mainstreaming migration and what it does to really sustain the impact of migration over time. So it's not really focused only on specific projects, but really integrated as part of the normative apparatus in policy responses. And this not only at the national, but also at the local level. So thank you so much for your support. So I'd like now to leave the floor to Erwan Martel, who's now appearing on our screen. And he's representing the Director General INSPA of the European Commission. You have the floor, Martel.
Thank you very much, Cécile and colleagues. And I would like really to thank a lot UNDP and IOM for organizing this presentation on the partner countries, also for having shared their experience. In the European Commission, INPA stands for International Partnerships. So you see, we are very much tuned in the same theme, the same wavelength as the discussions of today. I really want to say that the way we see it is that the initiative presented today is a concretization of the cooperation between 2 UN agencies with different but complementing mandates, and we really welcome the results that have been presented. Thank you for the words of Administrator Steiner and Director General Vittorino in confirming this partnership between the two agencies. We can only praise and encourage this further work, this further cooperation on migration and development. As maybe some of you may know, the pandemic has led the EU to respond as a whole with a Team Europe approach, together with the member states and the EU institutions, with our partners around the world, for health and for sustainable recovery. This is in the spirit of partnership, of course. More generally, and for a long time, migration is an integral part of EU development policy. We want migration to work for development, and we want migration to work better for all those involved, and particularly for the migrants themselves and their families. That's what we do to the best of what we can with the implementation of our development policy, now with a new programming cycle that fully includes the consequences of the pandemic. Also there with the same Team Europe approach with EU member states in a number of countries and regions. We have the same partnership approach with the external dimension of our migration policy, what we call the European Pact on Migration and Asylum. I want to underline that both policies, development and migration, are distinct but strongly interrelated. For migration partnerships, we have cooperated with partner countries and the United Nations as a whole, and with many agencies. We want to help build the capacity for migration. We want the UN migration network to deliver to its full potential, and we want migrants to be actors of development. So from the discussion today, we have heard very interesting examples and findings. I will not repeat, but I would like to say that we really welcome the recommendations for future collaboration, for strengthened migration and development approaches. And I have noted with particular interest those related to local governments, with the remarkable example of Lima, and also on the theme of regional cooperation, on the gender dimension. I think what I heard, for instance, but I'm sure it was the case also for those that were not presented today. I heard for Bangladesh, for Kyrgyzstan, for Lesotho, that in a way, this incredible challenge has turned into opportunities, and that's remarkable. So again, a big thank to UNDP and the partners for having presented this. This is very inspiring for us, and we will continue to partner with you on all of this. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Erwan, and I think you've done a remarkable job as well as bringing together some of the salient points of the interventions that we've heard today. And really looking forward, of course, to working with Team Europe as part of the new approach that is being coined in the European Union. This opens up a lot of really exciting opportunities, and particularly indeed, as you were saying, to embed migration within the development planning as it is being done by EU delegations on the ground. So this is really a key element of what could be our partnership moving forward. So thank you so much for that. So as you can all see, we're running behind time. This is often the case in such meetings. So I was wondering whether we could maybe just take a few interventions from the audience, maybe for the coming 5 minutes before we move to the concluding remarks. So if somebody wants to take the floor, please do, and do announce your name and organization affiliation, and please be very brief. Also turning to the panel members in case there will be additional considerations that you'd like to offer before we close the event today. So opening the floor for 5 minutes now. Please do raise your hands if you want to come on. So I see that we have a follow-up comment from Mr. Moshin. So you have the floor. Please be very brief if you can.
Thank you very much.
You've muted yourself.
Okay, now can you hear me? So thank you very much. That and again, I think the host is is okay. Thank you very much. That some of our delegates or the participants mentioned the Bangladesh name. They are working there. I just want to mention one success story. What we are doing now, that our whole of society approach in disaster risk reduction and resilience are minimizing the risks of COVID-19 and keep economic growth as well. It's very important that whole of society approach is meant with the government, the development partners, INGOs, NGOs, and the community. They're very much involved with our work. But only one thing I want to mention, the accurate and the reliable data must be the foundation of the basis of any intervention. That is a very important. I think sometimes we face the silence. I hope IOM and UNDP pilot project works for building more resilient society, and it will help us as well as just to increase the common area and all over the country. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moshin. So I see there is in the chat someone that says, can Mr. Martel say a few words about the coming initiative on skills partnership? So Erwan, that's a direct question for you.
I think I will refrain from commenting much because the launch event is tomorrow actually. Oh, no, next week. I'm confused now. And more will be disclosed about something that we have chosen to name as talent partnership, not even skills partnership, but talent partnership. And that's what we want to do to promote legal migration, to legal ways of migrating, and particularly for work and for studying and for work. And that's what we are working on with our member states. It will be Commissioner Johansson that will be hosting this event. And I really invite you to also have a look at that. Allow me not to say more than this before that the official launch has not yet been made. But we are really hopeful as EU, as European Commission, that it will help to change a certain number of ways and also support a positive narrative about migration as a legal dimension that is bringing positive advantage for everybody, for the countries of origin, of destination, for the migrants themselves as well. Thank you. Over. I'm sorry to be more specific.
No, many thanks and well understood. So that was perfect advertisement for an event to come, and very much, of course, welcoming the terminology that you used. That we're talking about talents, and I think this is exactly what we should be focusing on when we think of, people on the move and what they represent for our societies, if the right conditions are put in place. So I'm just looking at whether there's any. That's my last call for potential intervention from the participants before we move to the closing remarks. So I think we are ready to move to the closing remarks. So let me first of all warmly thank you all for your very active participation. Obviously, the panelists themselves very much appreciate the time you took to prepare your interventions, and really, being so vocal about some of the main concerns that you are faced in your respective country situations, but as well the innovation with which you are tackling those, and really seeing how working together as one UN is leading us the way forward, and this being very much embraced and welcomed by the interventions that we heard from bilateral cooperation agencies and development partners. So thank you very much for confirming that we are going in the right direction. So indeed, working closely as one UN is essential to build back better from this pandemic. And really, this seed funding initiative has proven that by working hand in hand, we can create more united, equal and sustainable communities in the wake of COVID-19 on our path towards longer-term socio-economic recovery. So we therefore need to see the seed funding initiative as a great contribution to the overall efforts within the UN country teams in partnership with governments, and Also, what is really important, and going back to some of the comments from the Director General of IOM at the beginning, see how this can also be picked up by other type of pool funds, and particularly the migration MPTF. So, you know, making those connections and bringing those initiatives to scale is really the work ahead of ourselves. And it's fantastic to see that IOM and UNDP will continue to invest in this. We look forward, therefore, to have the ability to maybe on a regular basis be reporting on the achievements we make and the opportunities that this creates to connect this with broader initiative, again, to bring this to scale. So I'd like now to turn to David Koudour to also offer some concluding remarks on behalf of UNDP. Many thanks.
Merci, Cécile. Thanks, colleague, for still being here. I won't be long. This event was part of the UNDP development dialogues. We have been running very exciting discussions for the last 3 months, and I'm very happy that one of the latest or the last events is on the issue of migration and COVID-19, but still you have the program on the chat, and there are other development dialogues in the next few weeks or days, including. Thanks for your participation. All, as mentioned, I mean, we have just presented the first step of this joint initiative. The idea is that we are going to keep working on that, and we thank again IOM for matching funds with UNDP contribution, and we hope that this will help leverage our impact in some of the countries which participated so far, but hopefully too with new countries. So we will inform all the colleagues in the field everywhere about the next steps of this joint collaboration, and hopefully we will be able to scale up and extend our work, because even though it seems from some of our countries that COVID-19 is over us, in many developing countries, it's not the case, and we still have to be very pending of the situation, and to take into account migrants and communities in our responses and recovery efforts. Thanks to the donors also who intervened. We took note of the importance of issues like local governance and also regional cooperation, coordination, and the issue of gender, where we already had a stronger focus, but where the collaboration with IOM can be a strong push in that direction. So thank you, colleagues. Have a nice morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. And of course, we are in touch with the next steps of this successful collaboration. Thanks, Cécile. Thanks all the colleagues in IOM, UNDP for this event, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.